Nero. Nero Claudius Caesar. Augustus Germanicus, the fifth emperor of the Julio-Claudian dynasty, is known as one of the most controversial leaders in Roman history. Ruling from the age of 16 after being adopted by Claudius, Nero was initially mentored by philosopher Seneca and military prefect Burrus, who helped stabilize his rule. However, after breaking free from their influence, Nero began to exhibit tyrannical policies. Nero is best known for his alleged role in the Great Fire of Rome in 64 AD. Although some historians doubt his involvement, Tacitus notes that Nero blamed Christians to deflect suspicion away from himself, sparking the first persecution of this community in Rome. Nero's policies were often filled with cruelty, including the execution of his biological mother, Agrippina, and his wife, Octavia. He also used the wealth of the state for ambitious projects, such as the construction of the Domus Aurea, or Golden Palace, which strained the Roman economy. His reign ended after revolts in the provinces, including by the Gaulish governor Vindex and Spanish forces led by Galba. Nero committed suicide in 68 AD, ending the Julio-Claudian dynasty. He remains a symbol of luxury, paranoia, and abuse of power in Roman history. Caligula. Gaius Julius Caesar, Augustus Germanicus, known as Caligula, was the third emperor of the Julio-Claudian dynasty, who reigned for 4 years, from 37 to 41 AD. The nickname Caligula, meaning little shoe, was given to him as a child because he often wore soldiers' shoes while following his father, Germanicus, on military campaigns. At the beginning of his reign, Caligula was enthusiastically received as he replaced Tiberius, an unpopular emperor. He abolished some of Tiberius's repressive policies and gave bonuses to soldiers. However, after suffering a severe illness in the first year of his reign, his behavior changed drastically, which was considered by many to be the beginning of his tyranny. Caligula was known for his eccentric and cruel policies. He often abused power, spent the state's wealth on lavish parties, and even claimed to be a god. He reportedly appointed his horse, Incitatus, as a priest and candidate for consul in contempt of the Senate. In addition, he ordered the summary execution of his political enemies and even his own family. His reign ended with the assassination of his own bodyguards, the Praetorian Guard, in 41 AD. Despite the controversy, historical accounts of Caligula are often biased, making it difficult to separate fact from political propaganda. Qin Shi Huang. Qin Shi Huang, posthumously named after Yingzheng, was the first emperor to successfully unify China in 221 BC, establishing the Qin dynasty. An ambitious and authoritarian leader, he consolidated power by abolishing the feudal system and replacing it with centralized government. This allowed for tight control over a vast territory. Qin Shi Huang's greatest successes included the unification of writing systems, currencies, measures, and transportation, which strengthened national integration. However, his reign was also known for brutal policies. He ordered the burning of Confucian philosophy books and executed many scholars, an incident known as the burning of books and burial of scholars alive. He started major infrastructure projects, such as the Great Wall of China, to defend the country from northern nomadic tribes. In addition, he built monumental tomb complexes, including the Terracotta Army, as guardians of his tombs. Qin Shi Huang used forced labor on a large scale, causing the people suffering. Although his reign lasted only 15 years after his death, his legacy was influential in shaping modern China. He's remembered as a controversial figure, a visionary leader but also a repressive tyrant. Cambyses II. Cambyses II was the son and successor of Cyrus the Great, the founder of the Achaemenid Persian Empire. He is known for his expansion into Egypt in 525 BC, which marked the peak of his ambition to expand Persian power. After defeating Pharaoh Psamtik III at the Battle of Pelusium, Cambyses II conquered Egypt and made it one of the satrapy, provinces, of the Persian Empire. His reign is characterized by reports of cruelty, especially from Greek sources such as Herodotus. Cambyses is described as insulting Egyptian tradition by killing the sacred bull Apis, a symbol of purity in Egyptian religion. He is also said to have ordered the murder of his own brother, Bardia, to secure the throne. His expedition to Ethiopia reportedly failed due to a lack of logistical preparation, causing the deaths of many of his soldiers. Cambyses II died mysteriously in 522 BC while returning from Egypt, which sparked a major revolt in the Persian Empire. Some modern historians argue that Cambyses' reputation as a tyrant may have been exaggerated by hostile sources, but his repressive measures remain an important part of his legacy. Attila the Hun. Attila, known as Flagellum Dei, or Scourge of God, was the most famous leader of the Hun Empire. He led the Huns in Europe and became one of the greatest enemies of the Roman Empire. Under his leadership, the Hun Empire reached the height of power, with territory stretching from Central Eurasia to Western Europe. Attila was famous for his brutal military campaigns. He attacked the Eastern Roman Empire, or Byzantium, in the 440s, forcing them to pay huge tribute to stop the attacks. In 451 AD, he invaded the Western Roman Empire, but was stopped at the Battle of Chalons by combined Roman and Visigoth forces. His reputation as a ruthless leader was bolstered by his attacks on European cities, where he practiced arson, massacre, and slavery to gain control of territory. Although considered a tyrant by his enemies, to the Huns and his allies, Attila was a strong and charismatic leader. Attila died suddenly on his wedding night in 453 AD, believed to be the result of internal bleeding. After his death, the Hun Empire soon collapsed. His legacy lives on as a symbol of ruthless conquest, but also as an astute and tactical leader. Ivan the Terrible. Ivan IV Vasilievich, known as Ivan the Terrible, or Ivan Grozny in Russian, was the first Tsar of Russia to rule with the official title Tsar of all Russia. He is known as one of the most important rulers of Russia. He is known as one of the most complex rulers in Russian history, combining great ambition with extreme cruelty. Ivan began his reign with significant reforms, including the modernization of the military, the codification of laws, and the expansion of Russian territory through the conquest of Kazan, Astrakhan, and Siberia. However, the second half of his reign was characterized by paranoia and brutal violence. In 1565, Ivan introduced the oprichnina policy, which created fiefdoms directly under his control. Through this policy, he used private armies, the oprichniki, to oppress nobles, boyars, whom he suspected of being enemies. This policy led to mass executions, destruction of villages, and widespread fear. Ivan is also known for the murder of his own eldest son, Ivan Ivanovich, in an uncontrollable rage, which left Russia without a strong successor. Although known for his cruelty, Ivan expanded Russia to become a major power in Eastern Europe. His legacy remains controversial. He was a symbol of imperial power, but also a ruler who sowed terror in his own land. King John. King John of England, also known as John Lackland, was one of the most controversial rulers in English history. He ruled from 1199 until his death in 1216. John is remembered for repressive policies, conflicts with barons, and the loss of important English territories in France. As king, John faced a number of major challenges. He lost Normandy and other parts of France in the Anglo-French War against King Philip II, which weakened England's reputation and finances. To finance the war and cover the losses, John imposed heavy taxes that burdened the people and barons. His conflicts with the Catholic Church were also striking. He clashed with Pope Innocent III over the appointment of the Archbishop of Canterbury, which led to his excommunication and interdict against England for several years. In 1215, the barons' discontent culminated in a rebellion that forced John to sign the Magna Carta, a document that limited royal power and became the basis for English constitutional law. However, John soon broke the treaty, sparking the First Civil War. John died in 1216 from illness, leaving a legacy as a militarily and politically failed monarch. Although often portrayed as a tyrant, his reign also encouraged the establishment of modern legal principles. William the Conqueror. William I, known as William the Conqueror, was the Duke of Normandy who became King of England after victory in the Battle of Hastings in 1066. He founded the Norman dynasty and brought great changes to England, but his rule is often considered repressive and violent. After conquering England, William faced rebellion from the Anglo-Saxon people. To assert his power, he ordered the harrying of the North, 1070 to 1071, a campaign of destruction that destroyed villages, burned fields, and caused famine in the north of England. These actions killed thousands of people and devastated local economies. William introduced a system of feudalism that strengthened royal control over land. He confiscated the lands of the English nobility and gave them to his Norman supporters, creating deep ethnic and social tensions. An effective administrator, William also ordered the Domesday Book in 1086, a comprehensive survey that recorded England's wealth and assets for taxation purposes. William died in 1087 from wounds sustained in a military campaign. His legacy was a more organized English state, but one based on repression and inequality, making him an important and controversial figure in English history. Henry VIII. Henry VIII was one of the most famous monarchs in English history, reigning from 1509 to 1547. He is known for his role in shaping the Church of England, scandalous personal life, and authoritarian rule. One of Henry's most significant moves was the Act of Supremacy in 1534, which separated the Church of England from the authority of the Pope in the Vatican. This separation was triggered by his rejection of the Pope's decree forbidding the annulment of his marriage to Catherine of Aragon. This decree brought major reforms, but also oppression, including the closure of monasteries and the confiscation of church property. Henry married 6 times, with 2 of his wives, Anne Boleyn and Catherine Howard, executed on charges of treason and adultery. His unstable behavior and harsh policies created tension at court and among his subjects. As leader, Henry increased royal power through naval modernization and the strengthening of royal authority over law and administration. However, his heavy spending on war and lavish lifestyle put a strain on the English economy. Henry died in 1547, leaving a legacy of an independent Church of England but also a trail of authoritarianism and repression. He remains an influential figure in English politics, religion, and culture to this day. Louis XIV. Louis XIV, known as the Sun King, was one of the most influential and authoritarian monarchs in French history. He ruled for 72 years, making it the longest-running monarchy in European history. Louis XIV strengthened his absolute power by abolishing feudal rule and controlling the nobility through a system centered around his palace in Versailles. As an absolute ruler, Louis XIV implemented repressive policies against political and religious opponents. In 1685, he issued the Edict of Fontainebleau, which revoked the Edict of Nantes, banned Protestantism, and forced thousands of Huguenots, French Protestants, to leave the country, which negatively affected the French economy and society. Louis XIV was involved in a number of major wars, such as the War of the Spanish Succession, which depleted the country's resources. High taxes to finance the wars and lavish projects, including the construction of the Palace of Versailles, burdened the French people and increased discontent. Although his reign strengthened the centralization of power and French culture, his authoritarian style also created tensions that contributed to the French Revolution a century later. Louis XIV remains a symbol of absolute power and luxury, as well as a figure who divides views in history.